The new administration in Washington, D.C. is pursuing a very aggressive agenda that will have huge impacts on all of the states. The Council of State Governments is not only monitoring those activities, but seeking to be the voice of the states in D.C. to make sure that the outcomes are first understood by the states, but secondly, that unintended consequences that would adversely impact the states can be avoided wherever possible. On infrastructure, the federal government doesn't really build things. They pay the states and counties and cities to build things. If the $1 trillion in infrastructure improvements that the president talked about in his campaign were to come to fruition, it means the states have a lot of stake in how their roads, bridges, airports, water systems, internet services, all of that would be worked out. Tax reform is another big issue, and that would obviously impact the states. The tax deductibility of municipal bonds, for example, would be one element of a change that could have big impacts on the way in which we finance infrastructure improvements at the state and local level. The deductibility of state and local taxes on your federal returns would have big fiscal implications. So those are some of the things that we will be monitoring in the way in which we believe the states have a prerogative to assert their interests. We aren't a special interest in the federal government. We're a partner in governing. And that's where CSG is going to seek to work with all of the state leaders to make sure our interests are represented well in DC. First and foremost, we listen to our leaders. They continue to say they value a place where they can come together to discuss the issues that are their priorities and frankly focus on what works. What are the solutions that will make a difference? How can they impact the citizens they serve in positive ways? And frankly, that's about enhancing prosperity, growing the economy, creating good jobs, making sure a state has the workforce they need to fill those jobs, that schools turn out students capable of taking their place in the careers of the 21st century. That's the kind of issues that tend to bridge those partisan divides. And while the inertia and some of the chaos in Washington, D.C. is a direct result of that hyper-partisanship and that polarization. The fact of the matter is, state government continues to be driven largely by citizen legislators who have to go back and work or live with the people they serve, and their time in the state capitol is focused about working across the aisle very frequently to try to find solutions to budget issues, and they don't want to dwell on those differences. So while polarization is something that I think all of us need to watch, with civility, with grace, and with a commitment to being focused on a solution, I think our members continue to see CSG as a valuable tool to help them overcome those partisan divides, that polarization, and actually work on making a difference. Well, it's like anything. I would just recommend you jump right in. There's any number of ways to connect. First, poke around our website, see what kind of resources are there. Check out what the Book of the States is. Look into what shared state legislation is all about. These are resources that are renewed each year, and they provide a real-time access to information that may be very beneficial to state leaders, particularly new state leaders. But the other thing is just to pick up the phone. If there's ever a question they have about a particular issue or something they want to get involved in, we're always an email or a phone call away. That's true of both our regional offices and our national headquarters and our Justice Center office. So reach out. Engage with us when there's a question or a challenge that you need some help. Let us be your staff. Let us expand your reach. Let us deepen your understanding. And then, of course, attend one of our meetings. Go to a regional meeting. See what that's about. When I was a legislator, that was my entry point. I happened to represent a state in the Midwest. Going to the Midwestern Legislative Conference provided me with that sense of family, provided me with a great reservoir of friends over several years. And I would say that if I could recommend anything, it's to find a way for young legislators to get to one of those meetings. Our leadership development programs are also a great way to connect. Each of our regions has a leadership development program. Applications are available online if they want to check out those programs. And our national program, the Henry Toll Fellows Program, brings together 48 state leaders from all three branches of government, 12 from each region, for an intensive boot camp leadership development experience. I went through that program. What others have told us, it's life-changing. It certainly was for me. Seek out those kinds of opportunities to deepen your leadership skills, because ultimately it's about empowering our members to make a big difference. And so we would enthusiastically invite new legislators to check us out and just get involved. The Council of State Governments is an organization of all of the states. We find it's great to be out listening to state leaders in their state capitals. Our regional directors each year tour almost every state capital in the United States. They're hearing from majority leaders, minority leaders, judges, executive branch officials. We think that by convening active conversations in all of the ways we seek to do that is the best way we can keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on. Obviously, we have partnerships and resources that help us be informed about data and the news. But ultimately, it's about close personal working relationships with the leaders in the states that allow us to understand when do we need to adapt, when do we need to focus on an issue of great importance. Most recently, if you look at the epidemic of opioid overdose, that certainly was a trend that emerged in a few states and now is a significant problem in many, many states. It cuts across all kinds of demographics and is a huge challenge both as a public health issue and as a public safety issue, as an education issue, as a family issue. And so as we see those trends emerging from our members' own experiences in their districts, we seek to provide them with the kinds of resources that they need to better understand the issue, understand what other states are doing, understand what research is telling us is a best practice to really make an impact, and providing them with legislation from other states, with information from national resources, to allow them to ultimately decide how best to craft solutions for their state. Well, having served 12 years in a legislative body, both in the House and the Senate, I knew that I couldn't just do things by myself. My colleagues were a great source of insight and inspiration, some frustration, but I also knew that by connecting to an outside resource like CSG, that ultimately I could be a better legislator. So now as the executive director of CSG, I take it as frankly, a sacred trust that the states entrust us with their dues to make sure that every day we wake up and we're driven by the goal of creating excellence in state government, that the citizen legislators who make great sacrifices to step forward, to campaign for office, to serve in office with, frankly, in most places, very little pay, know somebody has their back. And so I guess the kinds of resources, the kind of support, the kind of training I got from CSG made a difference for me. It made me a better lawmaker. It made my state a better place. And it made my citizens safer, healthier, more prosperous. Those are things that you can't discount the importance of what that means. And so now that I'm working at CSG, and I think I share this inclination with all of my colleagues across all of our offices, the 250 people that work at CSG on behalf of the states. We're driven by one mission, and that's to say to state officials, we've got your back. We're your partner. We're your teammate.